What would you define as a unit test compared to the other types of testing? Do you have some rules that you define as, say, a unit test can't, I don't know, work on a database? A unit test must be small compared to the other types of stuff. Functional testing, perhaps, is testing the business logic. Do you have any of those kind of things that you work with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's just my opinion, and different developers will have their own opinions. Mine, I like to keep unit tests focused on business logic,
right? And
what I try to avoid with unit tests, and you can't do this completely, is you try and avoid input-output stuff. So maybe interacting with a file system or interacting with database and things like that, because when you get into that area, it becomes a bit messy with unit tests and you end up having to do lots of mocks or stubs and things like that.
So you're not talking here about, when you say input-output, you're not talking about, say, making sure that a value is set after, say, you've injected it. It's more to do with the input. It's more to do with perhaps the input of going into the file system, like you mentioned, or going into the database, or using another dependency. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's exactly that sort of stuff. And because I would say once you start dealing with, because you should test that bit, the input output, like handling a database request or calling the file system. But you've wandered into sort of what I'd call integration tests, and then functional tests are obviously looking at things like maybe an API endpoint that's exposed to a user or a client or what have you. But I think if you focus your unit tests on business logic only, they become much easier to write.
Right.
And it will also hopefully result in better code, because ideally, like your business logic, the stuff that is like processing data and making decisions about in your application, it shouldn't care where data came from or where it's going.
That's true. Yes.
So
that's
like
true.
if the data came from the database and is going to the file system or vice versa, your business logic doesn't care about that. It just gets a collection of data, does some processing on it, and then passes it on to whoever needs it.
I dig that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I dig that. I certainly get that. I guess, I mean, you could, for instance, decide one day to change your database, or change the type of file system that you're using. Maybe it's S3 one day, maybe it's something else another, and you removing that coupling from the unit test. So making the test just test the smallest thing and not worrying about where that thing actually lives means that test in itself is quite reusable in other contexts.
Absolutely, I agree.
I definitely dig that. I must say that when I started unit testing a long time ago, and I'm certainly not, I don't test all the time, unfortunately. But when I started, I mixed and matched everything together, and it was like this one big mess of functional integration and unit tests all in one massive thing. And it got to, say, 30, 40, 50 tests, and then suddenly the system would just lock down because it would be trying to, run the browser and add and stuff to the database and remove things from the database to clean up the test and tear it all down. And I thought what I was doing was really, really awesome, and then it suddenly just locked up. And then I discovered what perhaps these unit tests should actually be, and then it's a very weird process of breaking down an application into testing a singular thing, because it's quite difficult when you've got a very complicated application, as most applications are complicated. Breaking them down into small little modular components to the nth degree to test that one thing can actually be quite difficult. And I found that testing often means that I have to restructure my application because my application isn't testable.
Yeah.